Welcome everybody, I'm Grandmaster Krisztian Szabo and this is the Endgame Crash course, where I will show several kind of endgames. Pawn endgames, rook endgames, how to play with bishop pair in some general positions, minor piece endgames, light pieces endgames. Let me show you my first example. This is the position between Koch and Rubinstein. White to move here, and we have immediately a very important question. How should White continue the game? Black would like to play Rook h4 and create a weakness on h2. Or I can say this is a weakness already, and the white rook should protect somehow. So the first question is that how about to go rook c1 and go to a pawn endgame from a rook endgame? That's why this is a very important moment, because the rook endgames gives very good drawish chances even if our position is worse. This is a very typical endgame principle. But if we go to a pawn endgame, that will be not easy at all, and then there is no rook with which can give some counterplay, even with material or positional down too. Rook c1 happened in the game, and this was a losing move. White should have been played, by the way, f4 instead, preventing the rook h4, b5, king d3, and black's position is a little bit more comfortable because his rook is more active, but with an accurate play it is possible to hold the position. But let's see what happened in the game. Go back to rook c1. Rook takes c1, king takes c1. So we are in the pawn endgames. Endgame seems to be a normal position. However, black will have a very nice activity. King f6. Rubinstein immediately found the great counterplay. He prepares for king g5, king h4, king h3, and attack the h2 weakness. King d2. Of course, the white king also should go that way. King g5, king e2. The king d3 would be too slow, so the attempt for the counter attack, because king h4, king c4, king h3 is definitely very slow. So let's see king e2 instead. King h4, king f1, king h3, and king g1. The white king is arrived in time, so seems to be is just okay because he protected and okay. On the other hand, black had a huge space advantage. Thanks for that, his king could come very quickly to the white side, to the third rank, and now with some pawn advance he can gain some space, and thanks for that win the game. But let's see how is it going on exactly. e5, the most accurate continuation, because prevent the f4 stuff, because this pawn we don't really want to trade yet. What can white do? Just stand. King h1. f4 also wouldn't be good because e takes f4, e takes f4, king g4. It's very clear we won the pawn without any special counterplay. Or even e4, g5, king h1, and h5. Come with the pawns, king g1, but still not clear how we will play. h4, advance with the pawns as much as possible. King h1, g4, f takes g4, king takes g4, king g2. Also seems to be just okay, but thanks for we advance with the h pawn, we have a great h3 check, king f1, king f3, and suddenly black is winning because he lost the e4 pawn. Okay, so this was the e4, which is also not working. How about a4? Probably still a4 is the best way, because okay, b6, b5, but doesn't really matter because the tempo is not a point in this position. f5, king h1, g5, king g1, h5. So come with the pawns. This is the most flexible which is possible, and still now we can decide which pawn should we with which pawn should we come. h4, king g1, e4, f takes e4, f takes e4. So now we trade the f pawns, and the g pawn is ready to... What is the plan? The g pawn is ready to go towards g3. This will be the real breakthrough, and then if we exchange everything here, then it's simply king f3, king e3, or win the pawn, and black wins the position without any problem. So king h1. If he tries f3, then he takes e4, go to the find something counterplay, but of course it's not working because g4. I think it is even king g4 was also fine, and king f2, king f4, this is also winning without any counterplay. But okay, g4 is easier, e5, g3, and winning because we will have queen quicker. So let's go to this position. King h1, g4, king g4. Yes, because in case of g4, let's see how was it going on king g1, g3, h takes g3, h takes g3, and what can he do? Loses quickly. King f1, g takes f2, king f2, king h2, and easy winning. How about if he would take with the f pawn, then h takes, for example, king h1, and let's see how to do now. G takes h2, and then a5, king g3, 8 takes b6, and thanks for the stalemate motif, this is draw. So we cannot take this pawn after king h1, we should play king g4, but this is still fine because king g2, g takes h2, so king g4 is just avoiding the stalemate. And the plan is same, exchange the pawns and then win the e3. So this is also winning without any problem. For example, king g2, g takes h2, and white is hopeless. So g4 was also good here. He recommends king g4, which is also fine. King g2, h3, king g1, king f3, king f1, g4. Without any problem he could win. Okay, alright. So let's go back here, and king h1 happened in the game. b5. This is the most accurate because now black also has an extra tempo with a6. So this was even the most precise continuation. King g1, f5, and on the other hand we can do the same way. King h1, g5, king g1, h5. So first come with the pawns, and as we saw previously, okay, in there we started with h4, but g4 is also completely okay. e4, that's very important. White should also try to find counterplay, always if we have a little chance for that. Of course, in objectively this is not a chance, especially in this level, but we should try. If f takes g4, the simplest way is f takes g4, king g1, e4, And now we know the following plan, like h4 g3, which we could see previously also, and this is easy winning. On the other hand, the h takes g4 was also good, so this is also fine. But here we have to be even more precise, like f3, because g3 would be not good, because takes, and let's see how is it going on. It's very smart. So we go with the king, and when he is threatening to go to the b file, then coming the excellent defending move a4 exclamation mark. What is the point of this? If b takes a4, then king c1, and the side pawn can't win. Yes, rook pawn can't win, even if it is 2 also. Or if he would play a6, then a takes b5, and I can keep the opposition, king c1, king b4, king b2, without any problem. So g3 wouldn't be good, very nice. f3, king g1, so black need another maneuver, king h4, king h1. If king f1, that is also a very smart motif. Actually, we have to lose win tempos. King h5, very smart move, and only if king e1, then king g5, because now he has to decide. If he goes to, yeah, king f1 is the main. If he goes to king d2, then suddenly we turn back, and this is winning, because king e1, king h3 would be too slow, or king e3, then king h3, king f4, king takes h2, king takes g4, and just king g2 to protect the f2 pawn. If king f1, then we go to the other side, king f4, king e1, king e4, and we are more advanced in the center, king d4, king c4, and king b3. And we can see that king e3 will be too slow, king a3, king f4, king takes b4, king takes g4, a5, and yeah, we can see this is faster. Actually, it's only with one tempo, because if the pawn is going h4, then we are one move faster. e3, h6, a2, h7, and a1 queen, and black was faster. Alright, so this was the king f1 when we played king h5, brilliant way. How about king h1? Okay, then we can already go here immediately, king g5 and h3. G takes h3, king h2, a pawn sacrifice because he would like to avoid the black king march towards the queen side, because he would like to get counterplay here. But king g4, king g1, king f4, king h2. So as we don't have with black any breaking possibility on the king side, then we go to the other side, king e4, king takes h3. If king g3, then we have a nice winning with h2. And now we can see the a7 pawn is very important. Why? Because if king takes h2, king d3, for example, king h3, king e2, king g3, and just a6. That's why that b5 move was really important, because we had this extra a6, and later when we have an important moment, then we can try to play for win with this. So of course we can't play a6 before, because that tempo will be very important in the critical moment for us. Okay, and let's see in case of king takes h3. We play king d3, king g4, king e2, and we reach the same from here also, king g3 and a6. And just thanks for this last tempo, our position is winning. Awesome, let's go back. But okay, after f takes g4, the easier way was h takes g4, and then he has a much easier winning position. So f takes g4, f takes g4, king g1, and after e4, as I mentioned before, it's an easy winning. Okay, but in the game, after g4, white played e4. Okay, of course g takes f3 is not working because e takes f5 and suddenly this pawn is really quick. So f takes e4, f takes e4. Yeah, because the point is that if f takes g4 instead, then we can play h takes g4, sorry, king g1, and then e3. Very important, pawn sacrifice back, f takes e3, e4. Now we force back his king to h1, and we already saw this kind of position, g3, and black has an easy winning here. Okay, so this was the f takes g4. Let's see how about f takes e4, h4, king g1, and the same plan, g3, h takes, and here white resigned, because if he would play f takes, then king takes g3, or something like king f1 also doesn't help, because we can play even g2 check. Maybe this is the easiest way, king g1, and also this little smart a6, f3, king g3, and I get checkmate after this moves. Excellent. Okay, so this was our first game, and what is the conclusion? Really have to be careful with the pawn endgames. So if we are rook endgames and we are the defender side, then really be careful with that, and maybe sometimes even go to a worse pawn down rook endgame than space down and probably losing pawn endgame. Awesome, let me show you the next example, which is already actually it's still a middle game, but we will immediately go to an end game, which is a really practical one and a really general one, generally how to play this kind of positions. White is Ding Liren, black is Jan Duda, and this was in the candidate tournament in Madrid 2012. Queen f4 happened in the game. White decided to offer queen trade. Queen takes f4, g takes f4. So actually this is our standing position, because the topic is the end games. And what can we see in this position? White definitely better, or slightly better. Why? Because he gains the d file with his two rooks. So actually that is the only open file right now. Okay, beside the c, but there are knights there. And also this g takes f4 pawn structure is not bad at all, because it's a really flexible one. So the double pawn is no problem at all. Sometimes the pawn is going to e3, and for this we can say that there is no any problem with this at all. Knight c e4. Black tried to find some counterplay. Knight takes e4, bishop e4. But why he did that? Very logical, because open the c file for his own rook. Yes, so if you have a position which is not so familiar for you, always try to follow logical principles, like open the files for my rook, and usually we can find counterplay. Knight e5. White also continue with an activity move. Bishop d5 and a4, as the a2 was hanging now, so we just push it. a5 and e4. The trade with bishop takes d5 was also possible, and knight d5 and f5, but white didn't want to simplify the position so much, because less pieces, there are less chance to win. Rook c2, rook d2, takes, rook c8, and it's not clear why white would be worse here. So e4 happened, keep the tension, keep the bishops, and attack his bishop. Bishop b3, rook 1 d3, rook c1 check, bishop f1, and bishop c2. Let's see what can we see in this position. The black rook penetrates a little bit, but alone this is nothing. Somehow he would like to connect with the bishop and use out something. Okay, on the other hand, after rook c3, we will pin that completely. Rook d1. This is the way how he went out of the pin. Black had another possibility to sacrifice two pieces for the rook and the pawn with knight takes e4. Rook takes c2. Of course, rook takes e4 is nothing, because rook takes f1. It's also a nice intermediate move. King f1, bishop takes e4, knight d7, rook d8, knight b6, bishop b7, and black is also not worse, because the bishop is very good in this type of positions when there are pawns in both sides. It's also an important principle in chess. If there are pawns in the queen side and on the king side also, and the position is not closed completely, then the bishop is usually better than the knight, because much faster. Knight has good maneuvers, but in general the bishop is clearly better. So let's go back to the knight takes e4 position. Rook takes c2, rook c2, rook takes e4, rook takes b2. So this was the another option, which was still an interesting way. Knight c6, for example, rook c2 was our analysis. Bishop b5. Okay, white is very stable because protect the knight, pawn is protecting his bishop. So rook c5, king g2, g6, and I think this is an unclear position. Black king will come to g7, f6, so not clear what is his problem in this position. But okay, he didn't go here, he didn't want to change the structure, he wanted to be even safer. So rook d1 he played, rook takes d1, bishop d1, rook c4. White had to protect both of his pawns, a4 and e4 also. So that's why this rook c4 was important. And rook d8. This is already a little inaccuracy. Bishop b3 would be more important. He should search for something counterplay with this. Rook d4, And rook c8 also get an open file there. Bishop b5, and after knight h5, probably he really has some counter chance. But okay, rook d8 happened in the game, which was also logical because the d file, open file he gained. Let's see what was the problem with that. Knight c6. It's a nice tempo, and it's also a very important factor. He played rook d2. His back rank is weak, so now we can jump somewhere with the knight. Okay, we can take the a5 pawn, g6, rook c8 check, king g7, and knight c4 to come back with the knight here, rook c2. So now white is pawn up. However, black has some counterplay, so the e4 pawn is weak. He has some pin on the b file also, c file, sorry. So b4, rook c1 also try to get something here, but right now he could play knight takes b6, rook b1. Still he just focus on his counterplay with bishop e2. Yes, this is the important threat. However, white already has 2 pawns up. King g2, rook takes b4, and a5. The a pawn seems to be very dangerous and very quick, so black really has to be careful here. And okay, now he played another inaccuracy with rook b3. Logical move, he would like to go behind the pawn with rook a3, because from b4 of course it was no possible thanks for the knight, and also bishop f3 is an important possibility. However, probably knight h5 would be a little bit more accurate, because a6, knight takes f4, we couldn't protect the pawn on f4, king g3, knight h5 check, king g2, knight f4, and with perpetual check, black could hold the position. Of course, the b6 knight is a taboo, because a7 and promote the pawn. So rook b3, rook c1 came back here, tempo, bishop f3, king g1, and rook a3. Probably a little inaccuracy again, because it's a logical move, but white get a nice counterplay with his knight after this move. So probably bishop takes e4 would be the accurate move, knight c4, bishop d5, rook a1. That's why white need to play with the knight, because otherwise no a6, because the knight is always under attack by the rook. So rook a3, knight c4, rook a2, knight e5. This was the idea behind his maneuver, and actually now happened a decisive mistake with bishop takes e4. A very logical move, take the pawn and also control the long diagonal. But let's see what was this mistake. What was the problem with this? Actually, bishop h5 probably would still hold the position, because if rook c7, he has still g5, and this bishop is protecting the important f7 pawn. F takes g5, knight takes e4, with a nice counterplay. For example, a6, knight g5, king g2, yeah, go out of the checks, king f6, knight d7, king e7. There is no any good knight jump now with the discover check, knight b6 check, king d6 with a good counterplay where white doesn't have any problem at right, and black doesn't have any any problem at all. Bishop f3 can also come, the rook on a2 is active, knight on g5 is also active, so black is okay here. But bishop takes e7 happened in the game, and let's see why it was a decisive mistake. Rook c7, of course the penetration is important, and attack the weakness on f7. Knight d5, of course this pawn was unprotectable. Rook f7, king g8, and a6. Push the pawn. Knight b4. And rook a7. Very nice move, because if he would play a7, it's still also nothing, because come back to knight c6. And suddenly, white situation is also not easy. Knight takes c6 is no possible because king takes f7, or something like rook move. The a7 pawn has lost. So very tricky, a7 would be not working, but okay, rook a7, of course Dingliren could calculate this. Knight c6. Rook c7, knight d4, and f3. Also sacrifice back a pawn, but open the diagonal for his king and freeze the f2 square in this direction. Knight f3, bishop f3, a7. Bishop d5. Now white has a great pawn on a7, completely protected. Black cannot attack with one more piece. So he should just improve his rest pieces a little bit, his bishop and his king. h4, rook a4, bishop b5, rook a5, rook d7, rook a2, king f1, come with the king. What was the point of rook d7? If rook takes b5, we would like to promote, but the bishop is controlling, so rook takes d5, followed by a8 queen. So it was hopeless. Rook a2, king f1, bishop g2, king e1, bishop d5, king d1, still go, king h8, king c1, bishop e4, rook c7, rook a5, bishop d7, rook a1 check, king b2, rook b1, king a2, rook b6, king a3, king g8, and king a4, and slowly the white king march and will support the pawn for the promotion, and that's why black resigned here. Of course, he didn't want to hurry with this rook c8 and then a8 queen, because takes, and after rook b4 or rook d6, not easy. The white king has cut here, and if black could exchange these pawns, he can reach the draw. And with 3 pawns against 2, even with the bishop up, not really easy to avoid those type of stuffs. So the pawn is more valuable than the bishop, so he doesn't want it to exchange, and he wants to promote it for free, and black resigned the game.